Well, we just heard from Coach Harbaugh. Ashley Bastock from the Toledo Blade joins us now. And Ashley, Coach reiterating on Monday basically what he said after the game on Saturday, that the Wolverines were out-coached, they were out-prepared, they were out-hustled, they were out-classed, they were out everything. Yes. Which leaves a lot of fans wondering if it's time for Michigan to be out of the Jim Harbaugh business.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely felt that. I mean, I felt it on my own Twitter mentions on Saturday with the, frustration that a lot of Michigan fans are feeling. Now, might be a little premature in the season to be calling for Jim Harbaugh's head, but, at least the way he's handling it is, as you said, kind of taking responsibility for this loss, and he really did it again on Monday. That's really all he kept reiterating was, this is my fault. Like, no matter what product we put out there on the field, it's my responsibility to make sure that we're sound in our offenses, our defenses, whatever those offenses and defenses are. So, yeah, but you definitely feel the frustration, I guess, from the Michigan fan base, and a lot of them saying it's unacceptable, and that's what Jim Harbaugh said as well on Monday.
I can't see Michigan firing Harbaugh this season. I can't see Harbaugh quitting it this season, but stranger things have happened. I suppose looking at the situation in maize-colored glasses, perhaps this is where Michigan can rally together and say everybody's against us again. Yeah. Let's get out there and start playing good football. They play Rutgers this week. They're going to win that game. They'll get no credit for beating Rutgers, but this could be a rallying cry because there are some bigger games coming up.
Yeah, there are. I mean, the schedule's not getting any easier. They have Iowa after the Rutgers game. They still have to go to Penn State on the road. And, of course, the part of the schedule that we've all been talking about since the beginning of the season is when Notre Dame, Michigan State, and Ohio State all come to the Big House this year. So it's not getting any easier, right? But, I really think they do still have to respond from this game. If you come out and play poorly against Rutgers, you're still going to win. Like, they're going to win no matter what on Saturday, barring some unforeseen crazy circumstances. But it's how do you look when you win? Because they won the first two games and everyone was like, we don't know about this offense. Things looked kind of shaky, and the things that looked shaky against Middle Tennessee and Army are ultimately what came back to hurt them against Wisconsin. So I do think it is still, they do have to respond accordingly this week to get anywhere the rest of the season for these tough portions of the schedule that are coming up.
There is some people out there thinking that perhaps this will be Harbaugh taking back the offense, going away from the Josh Gattis speed and space, but certainly that's not sound like what Coach Harbaugh said on Monday.
No, it doesn't sound like he said on Monday, and he actually also got asked about Gattis' play calling on Saturday after the game and seemed a little irritated that he got that question. And again on Monday, he reiterated, I still believe in my coaching staff, and it sounds like he thinks these are the guys who can right the ship. Of course, if he does decide to take the play call sheet away from Josh Gattis, it would be huge news because since the spring we've heard that he has the keys to the offense. It's his offense, that Jim Harbaugh is going to keep his hands off of it. But right now they're still standing pat and attributing a lot of this stuff to growing pains, whether fair or not. I still think we haven't really seen what this offense is, which is concerning on a few levels. But right now, Harbaugh's still hands off.
The good news is you got Donovan Peoples-Jones back against Wisconsin. You got Jon Runyan back against Wisconsin. But Zach Charbonnet, while he did dress and he did play a few snaps, certainly Zach Charbonnet was not used as he was used in the first two games.
Right, and Jim Harbaugh got asked on Saturday, was that by choice, by design? And he said no. So then the next obvious question is Zach Charbonnet injured in some way? He said no, paused for, I timed it out, about 6 seconds, and said he's limited. So how he's limited, we're not sure. He got asked about it again on Monday, and he said that Zach was ready on Saturday, and he'll be ready this Saturday against Rutgers. So that's about all we know as far as his participation in the running game. The other guy that we got some news on is True Wilson, who did not make the trip with the team to Wisconsin. And Jim Harbaugh said he could possibly come back this Saturday, but not 100% sure either way.
And part of the backstory on Charbonnet was last week there was a rumor that Charbonnet had undergone arthroscopic knee surgery, had some sort of lingering issue from high school. But again, Coach Harbaugh was not going to touch that rumor. Yeah. No, so we don't really know what's going on with Zach Charbonnet. Mm-hmm. You got Jon Runyan back on the offensive line, yet the offensive line seemingly took a big step backwards. Now, granted, any offensive line's only as good as the weakest link, but you'd think you return Runyan, it would be a little bit stronger. Is that just a matter of that offensive line needing some more time to get chemistry going again with Runyan back in the rotation?
It could be, but Jon Runyan spoke with the media on Monday too, and he said it was almost demoralizing, that he thought that he would come back and this offensive line would maybe take a big jump forward, having another key guy back, but it really didn't. And Harbaugh said, again, these guys have to be better with protecting the ball and protecting the quarterback. And, you saw Dylan McCaffrey take some big hits, which resulted in him getting a concussion and leaving the game and now being out for Rutgers. And you saw Shea Patterson take some big hits, and that resulted in him needing to get evaluated at halftime. So, I think that it is kind of disappointing to those guys on the line and to the team that they didn't take a big step forward. But obviously, Jon Runyan didn't play for 2 weeks. So hopefully things look better for them against Rutgers and going forward.
You mentioned Dylan McCaffrey. Looks like he will not be available against Rutgers. Shea Patterson was in and out against Wisconsin. Minton's going to get some snaps as the official backup, so certainly that quarterback position now is a little bit of a question mark going up against Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously never good when your backup quarterback is out, but especially in Michigan's case because they've been playing Dylan McCaffrey for meaningful snaps. It hasn't just been in garbage time. And obviously in week 1 we saw the 2 quarterback packages, which didn't really work. We haven't seen them since. But he can get out and run when he plays. And Joe Milton is obviously a great athlete. You hear that from all the coaches, but just doesn't have a lot of experience beyond garbage time. So I guess against Rutgers, that's the best case scenario for conference play for when you can get a quarterback like Joe Milton in the game. But yeah, never a good thing when your backup quarterback is going to be doubtful for any contest.
Switching to the other side of the ball, we knew Jonathan Taylor was going to get his yards. That was Jim Harbaugh's. That's what he wanted to do coming into this game. That was the entire plan, was let Jonathan Taylor get his yards. I don't think they wanted to let him get 200 yards, and that's what's missing the entire second quarter. So now we got some questions again about this Michigan defense, particularly stopping the run. We saw what Ohio State did against them. We saw what Florida did against them. And now all of a sudden, your last 3 games against Power 5 schools, you've not been able to stop the other team's offense.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge problem because, of course, we came into this game last week with them saying, well, we can't stop Jonathan Taylor. He's an early Heisman candidate, but we got to limit him. He did whatever he wanted out there. So I think this was a wake-up call for this defense in a lot of ways, which hadn't looked terrible through the first 2 games. There were some issues here and there, but they didn't look all that bad. And Saturday, I guess, was like a worst-case scenario, I would deem it, in that Wisconsin did whatever they wanted. So I think now the issue is going to become if future teams are going to look and say, okay, on the ground, pounding away at this Michigan defense and going right at that interior defensive line is a way to win. So we'll see if they actually improve on that stuff going forward.
You were in Madison on Saturday. You talked to the players after the game. You were in Ann Arbor on Monday, talked to the players as well. Is there going to be a Madison hangover? Are you feeling like they've put this game behind them at this point?
I don't think they have, but I don't necessarily know if that is reasonable to expect them to do that 2 days after this loss. They're obviously pretty upset, and they say, we hear the criticism. We hear when Charles Woodson says it's embarrassing to see how we played, but I think it's going to be how they respond through these next few days of practice more than anything, and not necessarily expecting them to bounce back from Sunday to Monday. It's about making sure they've actually learned something from this. Whenever those lessons actually take form will be the key for how the rest of the season goes, I think.
Rutgers comes into the big house on Saturday. Michigan, 4-1 all-time against Rutgers. They lost the first meeting in the first year Rutgers was in the Big Ten. And there's been some attempts to make Michigan and Rutgers a rival. Michigan has raided New Jersey from time to time, certainly picked up several very good players from the New Jersey area in the last couple of years. But let's face it, on paper, this should be a blowout. Michigan should get very healthy in terms of confidence coming out of this game.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like what I said earlier, I really think that it would take a huge unforeseen circumstance for Michigan to lose this game. But again, I think it just all goes back to how they look coming out and whether they've improved on some of these issues that they keep talking that they're going to improve on, like taking care of the ball, that the offense will actually make meaningful drives and look for its playmakers, that the interior defensive line isn't as terrible as everyone has said it was in the offseason. Until they actually show that, it's kind of all talk. So you can do all those things. You can fumble the ball against Rutgers probably if you're Michigan and still win because of the talent that Michigan has.
As long as you're not fumbling on the first series again.
Right, for the 4th consecutive game or 3 out of 4, whatever it is. But, I think it's all about how they come out and respond and how they look even if they win. Because as we've seen with this team now through the first 2 games, it's easy to win while you're still making mistakes. But we're coming upon really quickly the point of the season where making those mistakes is not going to win you any games in the Big Ten.
And again, we'll put on the maize-colored glasses once more and look at maybe a little big picture. It's one loss. It's one loss in the Big Ten, but it's not a division loss. So you certainly still have a chance. You still have a chance to make some hay in terms of in the national polls, perception. You got a chance to beat a Notre Dame team that's going to be highly ranked. You've got Michigan State coming in. You have to travel to Penn State, as you did mention, of course, the Ohio State game. So big picture, yes, it's a bad loss to Wisconsin. They didn't look good against Wisconsin, but it's not the end of the season quite yet.
Right, and Wisconsin's not even in their division, and right now Wisconsin is maybe seen as the darling to win the Big Ten West. So if they do, in fact, make it to Indianapolis, no matter who they play out of the East, I think that's going to be a heck of a game. They are definitely a physical team. That's kind of how Wisconsin always plays, especially after some down recruiting years, I think. They kind of need that physicality, and that's what Michigan's lacking, realistically. So if they learn it, and that's a lesson that they take from the rest of the season going forward, that's not the worst thing, as you say, putting on your maize-colored glasses when you look at it that way. But I think it's all about whether or not, again, these become more than talking points for them and these become action.
You brought up the R word. Let's talk about recruiting. Michigan has had highly regarded classes, but now there's some thought that maybe they've some swings and misses on kind of the heart of those classes. There's certainly been highly regarded guys who have paid off. You look in the NFL rosters, plenty of Michigan guys. But has Harbaugh missed on bulk recruiting classes, and that's what's hurting them this season, maybe?
Maybe, but I think there's so much, it's so difficult with recruiting, right? And I'm one of those people that I think the star rating system can get a little ridiculous at times. So maybe guys are overestimated talent-wise coming out of high school. And is that Jim Harbaugh's fault? Not necessarily. There's a lot of factors, I think, that go into that. But I think it's all of these things at once. You have a new offensive coordinator, a new system. You have guys that haven't played a ton together. Even looking at a guy like Tariq Black in the receivers corps, who's been on this team for a few years but hasn't played in a lot of games. Shea Patterson, obviously an upperclassman, has only been here 1 season. Time and time again, you realize these connections, and on paper, this looks like a veteran-heavy team that really isn't. But, I think there is still a lot of hope for some of the true freshmen now, like Zach Charbonnet, like a Daxton Hill, who could really affect and impact this team going forward. But I do think you have to give those guys some time. But I don't know if you can necessarily blame it all on recruiting. I do think a lot of it comes down to toughness and in recent years coaching and some decisions that have been made, play calling and whatnot. But I don't think it's one thing that has become Michigan's issue.
All right, thank you very much, Ashley. Certainly a lot to unpack following this Michigan loss to Wisconsin as they move forward. Didn't get a chance to get to all of it tonight, but you can go to the BCSN Now app for the full conversation about Michigan, Wisconsin moving forward and what the Wolverines can do to improve themselves.